Welcome back again, John Mazzara, Remax Results. And today we have Jen and Steve, Jen.lacroix and Steve Stinson with Habitat for Humanity. And we're going to talk about some of the realtor concerns. As a realtor of 37 years, I've kind of been around a little bit, sold over 1,000 homes and helped buyers throughout the whole Twin Cities area. And I've seen on my offers and, when I'm presenting an offer or when I'm receiving an offer, I've received a pre-approval letter. And the concern is how good is that letter? Because if we're going to take the home off the market for a period of, 30 to 60 days, we want to know that the buyer, assuming that they remain employed, are going to maintain their credit, that they're going to close with that lender letter, because we don't want to have a deal blow up. And so we're very sensitive to pre-approval letters. And so one of the real strong points that Habitat has is they do such good vetting that their letter is not garbage in, garbage out. And I want to stress that, so that as other agents that are watching this, and you're like, okay, I've got 5 offers in front of me, one of them is from Habitat. Do I weight that letter equally, or is it somehow a lesser letter, or maybe a superior letter? And I'm going to make the argument that maybe it's a superior letter because of the due diligence and underwriting that they've completed. Now, you may be unfamiliar with, as a realtor, or even as a seller, unfamiliar with Habitat as, and their financing, as I was, been around a long time. I had not worked directly with that program until I did, and I liked it. So that's why we're all here talking, because it was a positive experience. And I think it could be a positive experience for other home sellers, home buyers, and the agents. It's just the best kept secret. So we're exposing that secret today. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they do their vetting, approvals, how they look at the property as part of, and the home inspection as part of their approval, and what you as an agent might be able to expect when you work with them, because it might be an unknown. So let's make the unknown a known. So Jen and Steve, talk to me a little bit about what I just brought up.
So nobody knows more about agents' concerns than Steve and I. We hear them often and frequently, and I think you nailed it when you said, is it garbage in, garbage out? How good is our pre-approval letter? It's as good as the person that's writing it. I am very good at what I do. I've been doing this a very long time. Twin Cities Habitat is very good at what they do. And here's what I know. When our home buyers come through our process, as I mentioned before, they're not going to get a pre-approval in 24 to 48 hours. We don't apologize for that. It isn't anything that we feel real bad about, to be honest with you. All of my home buyers, by the time they get to our lending department and they work with Steve or myself, we've got 3 years tax returns. We gather bank statements. We gather 8 of their most recent paycheck stubs. That's how affordable housing works. We have to base our income off of 8 most recent paycheck stubs, not W-2s. So I know what's been going on in the recent 2 months, 3 months at their job, depending on their pay cycles. They've taken 8 hours of our mortgage education class, coupled with a home stretch certification that they're required to have. So by the time our folks get to us, they're really well educated on the process, which I think is the most important part. I think that's what makes pre-approval letters not valid. Is any loan officer will tell you, well, I didn't know that. How am I going to know if they didn't tell me? How are you going to know if you spent 5 minutes with them on the phone?
That's right.
So for us, it's that diligence. We update our pre-approval letters every 90 days. So we're going to re-pull credit. We're going to look at 8 additional paycheck stubs, gather any new tax documents that might have come. So right now, when Steve and I are updating things, we're, gathering folks' 2022 W-2s and or taxes if they have them. So I think it's just the diligence and really making sure that you know your home buyers before you issue a pre-approval letter.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funds are there. So it's not like we have to worry about money running out or money disappearing, and you're keeping everybody abreast. And so you're not creating a situation that's going to blow up. And that's,
we don't like situations that blow up. It
No,
makes us
my goodness, we'll lose sleep over that.
Yeah, no, there's, again, when you've been doing this long enough, you lose sleep over things like that, and that isn't a phone call that any loan officer relishes making, but most especially if it was not having done the diligence on their end. There are a few things that I think agents need to know that we do a little bit differently. You mentioned the inspection. I work with all first-time home buyers. So when those first-time home buyers come to us last summer, multiple offers everywhere, right? We had so busy. And so the first thing, what are we going to do to get into the house quicker? We're going to waive our inspection. Bunch of first-time home buyers waiving inspections all over the place. Calls to Jen that say, go a little like this. Jen, do you care if there's water in the basement?
Do you?
How come you don't? So what we found with our first time home buyers is that guiding them along is important for us, because as we mentioned before, we're not looking just to get anybody into a house. We're looking to get folks into a home that they're going to stay in. So if our home buyers choose to waive the inspection, that's completely up to them, but then we're going to do a separate walkthrough inspection for our purposes. One of those reasons are, as I mentioned before, we cover some of these costs for closing. So I'm going to order and pay for an appraisal. If there's water in the basement, what am I paying for an appraisal for? Any of my agents that we work with, usually what I say to them is, unless there's a major structural concern, don't be concerned. But if I ever call an agent, and I've had to do it very, very rarely because we've had issues with an inspection, I don't make apologies. We're looking out for our home buyers. We're conventional financing. Generally, it's very large problems, like there were beams holding something up in the basement. We didn't know what these large metal posts were for, and questions that our home buyer, had they been more savvy, probably should have asked. And our agent, had they been more diligent and committed to our home buyers, might have asked to know where they came from. So but we just don't run into issues, I would say 98.88% of the time. But we do ask to look at those inspections. That makes us a little bit different than the average lender. Again, I feel like there's none of us in the lending world that's going to control an appraisal. But looking at an inspection before you order an appraisal, you're going to know what's going to get called out, if anything, on that appraisal, because you'll have looked at the inspection.
And piggybacking off that inspection piece here, we do require 45 days for closings.
Good point.
Yep. A part of the reason is because we do work with nothing but first-time home buyers, so that education piece is important to us. We do not rush this process whatsoever, right? So we require 45 days to close. That inspection part is actually a big part of why we need that extra time too, because the inspection comes in, our team takes a look, and then we make our determinations, right? And so 45 days to close is really important to remember for realtors who are going to be helping their clients navigate the habitat.
And just to give you a general idea, John, keep it in perspective. We're working on, I think, I'm looking at close to 60 some closings here this fiscal year. I've not turned down one inspection or agents are, you guys know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You know more than I do because you're in the house. So there isn't anything that I'm gonna all of a sudden be looking at under a microscope that you would know about ahead of time. So it just isn't something that comes up, but it is a little different step to that process.
That's right.
Sure. So we do the home, we buy the home, we get it under contract, we do a home inspection normally. If the buyer doesn't want to do the home inspection, they just say, you know what, I'm just really good with this, it's just fine.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Can they still buy the house with your program?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yep. We'll just do a quick walkthrough. Remember, we're a home builder as well. So, we've got a whole different side of Habitat that builds and constructs home for our home buyers, for those people that aren't shopping on the MLS. So we've got folks that can do a quick run through on the property and our home buyers are first time home buyers. They want to know things like that maybe the main GFI switch needs to be replaced. I mean, it's simple little things like that just, again, we're a home ownership organization, not just a lender. So we want to make sure that, hey, we're taking a look at this. Furnace looks great. Hot water heater looks great. Those kind of things are things that it's nice for them to know maybe what's coming down the road, that kind of thing. It's just a service we provide for home buyers.
Perfect. And can that be done right after you get a home under contract, like within, let's say, a 10-day, 5-7 day home inspection period? You can get
we get out there immediately. So if your home buyers do waive inspection, we will schedule it, I would say, within a lot of times quicker than an actual inspection would be scheduled, by 48 hours, 24 hours, just depending on if you sent a purchase agreement over to me on a Monday, you're going to see somebody out at the house, I'd say by Wednesday or Thursday. Most times, that department can get bogged down as well, but with the exclusion of holidays, that kind of thing, yeah, it's pretty immediate.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So definitely within 5 days then.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the home, they don't have to worry about the home being off the market if for some reason you didn't like it or whatever.
No,
It's the
no,
same
no.
as
It,
the regular
it
stuff.
usually will fall into a lot of times any contingency period that you might have on that front end anyway. Yep.
Very nice. Okay. Yeah, I know you, I mean, Gemma bought a great home, but
Yeah.
and you guys you didn't cause, I mean, I could say cause any problems, but you didn't raise any issues or concerns. I mean, it was this very clean home and had been inspected already by Richfield, and it was built in the 80s. I mean, it was a solid house anyway, but
Well, and I just had a house that came across my desk that came with the Tisch report that was a mile long. That'll happen too. It's not that we see these perfect houses. We just know what our expectations are for lending on that collateral. We're not trying to micromanage the process or do anything other than make sure that we've got a house that we know is going to adhere to conventional lending guidelines. So, there isn't, we know that some houses, depending on people's affordability, can come with a little bit more hair on it. We're okay with that.
Yes.
cool. Awesome. Well, that's great to mention the conventional versus, let's say, FHA or VA guidelines. I know FHA and VA, are more stringent than conventional, and conventional, it makes it a little easier. So that's great that that's the guidelines that you adhere to. Steve, you'd mentioned the 45-day hard stop. Is that a hard stop, 45 days for when somebody writes an offer?
Yep. We're going to require that 45 days on all of our purchase agreements.
Okay. Can it be longer than 45, like 60 or
Sure.
70, 90?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be longer. That's not a problem.
Yep. We just can't turn around a loan in 28 days. Well, we could. We choose not to.
That's right.
Again, the experience for our first-time home buyers is as important to us as actually the closing. So we want to make sure that we're not just shoving paperwork at them and telling them sign here and sign here. We want to make sure that they understand the scope of their loan and the documentation needed. That way we have very smooth closings. No one ever calls and says, why aren't we closing? They always say we're excited to close.
Yeah, absolutely. And can they move it up? Is that an option? Or once it's scheduled, you guys kind of have like a schedule?
We get asked this a lot. It's tough with the CDs anymore to move a closing up, because in order to move a closing up, you had to have, your rewinding time. At that point, you've got to be, if you're going to move a closing up anymore, you got to be clear to close 2.5 weeks before closing, to really get a CD out in time and stuff like that. So 9 times out of 10 now, we're not going to move it up.
Yeah. Okay, really. So we should just plan on that when we write the offer. The closing date's the closing date, allow 45 days.
Yep.
And that allows the home buyers to kind of get their documents together. Oftentimes we're dealing with people who haven't undertaken quite such a laborious process as purchasing a home. And so there's a lot of, I don't want to say hand holding, but there's a lot of taking the time to make sure they know what information we need and why, what they're sending in and why, and the expectations of when things will be done, right? So we have different benchmarks, and we like to communicate that to the home buyers, right? And so again, some home buyers, they're unfamiliar with sending a PDF, right? And so we take the time to explain even that process to some people. Some people want to come by the office, drop off a document here, go back home, come back the next week, right? And so these little things do add up, and having those extra days in that closing, that 45 days, really does service the home buyers.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And it's definitely worthwhile. You pick up 2 points or better, and plus no MI. I mean, the financial incentive to do so is just massive. Okay, well, wonderful. Anything else, realtors, that you would like to say to realtors across the Twin Cities or the metro area where your loans are available, that they should be made aware of, or that you would like?
You know what? If I were gonna do a shout out or a call out, it would not be to as many agents sending home buyers our way. It would be more to the selling agents that are looking at our pre-approvals. I think that it's very easy to be skeptical when you look at a nonprofit or Twin Cities Habitat. You see that on the letterhead. You immediately think low income equals not as good of a shot to be purchasing this house. And we sometimes tend to put that at the bottom of the stack, or when they call about that pre-approval letter, I'll get questions and get grilled with things that would never normally happen in your regular private mortgage banking world. And that's because I think that, if I were going to say anything, it would be to selling agents to remember, when you see a pre-approval letter from us, how diligent we've been with our home buyers, and that our loans always close. And if you're looking at a pre-approval letter that's dated within the 90 days that letter is valid, we've really been all over that file, and we know everything there is to know about that home buyer and your loan will close.
Outstanding. And if
I
it's
like
just
to add too, to realtors out there, you can join our realtor network to kind of get more information about how you can better navigate the program.
A good point. Yes, we try and do our best to be kind of out there with a realtor network where we send out a quarterly newsletter.
Yep.
We've got some social media channels that we invite you guys to really connect with us on. We do a lot of stuff through our social media as far as celebrating the home buyers that do have closings, looking at houses that might once in a while we'll have available on the NMLS through that we built here at Twin Cities Habitat, how we partner with our agents and how we can better work together to serve Minnesota home buyers.
awesome. Awesome. Well, I don't know that I've subscribed to all this, so you'll have to send me that to add
Yeah,
to
you
the,
gotta subscribe.
Slack.
I can't believe it. I didn't know about it. So yeah, so everybody should go do that. And Steve and Jen are going to provide those links, and we're going to put those in the body of this description of the video, so that all realtors across the Twin Cities can utilize that. Well, that's great. I appreciate you again being here. Everybody, I hope learned more and feels a lot more comfortable with when they see that letter, knowing that they're going to get to the finish line, because it's a much stronger letter than a traditional automated underwrite or the ones that you do online. You know, this has been vetted, underwritten, buyer's been through training. I mean, it's solid. So awesome. Thank you again for visiting today.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you, John.